stream of E-mini Nasdaq 100 futures. Welcome to the scalping of a 30-second session. We're doing a 30-second time frame. We're doing scalping of a 1-to-1 risk reward, 5-point stop loss, coupled with a 5-point take profit. On the screen is a trade I took just before starting the session, and I'll briefly discuss it in just a moment, but I just wanted to leave it on the screen so you can see typically what the scalping strategy entails. It's mostly related to finding a trend. Once you find a market trend, then all you do is you wait for a liquidity grab. You wait for a continuation in the direction of the trend, and then you look for a 30% retracement. That's the simple strategy. I mean, that's the simple instructions to the strategy. I'll walk you through trades as they unfold this morning. And yeah, I hope you enjoy it. If you have any questions, throw it in the chat. Anything you need from me, even if it's not trading related, just yeah, ask a question. We'll have plenty of time where there's nothing happening, or we're sitting in the middle of a consolidation and we're not really actively taking a trade. And so again, welcome. So if I can briefly discuss the strategy and what I was looking at prior to the live stream starting. You basically can see that we had a red folder news at 8:30 this morning. So we had major news, which created some volatility and sent price upwards. I mean, prior to the news, it was pretty much just consolidation, not a lot of movement happening. And then the news came at 8:30. You can see there was a big drop, took out some lows. Once that liquidity was grabbed, then it reached for liquidity that was sitting up top for anyone who went short at 8:30. And then the continuation happened. So the way the strategy works is once you find a trend, as in once these highs were taken, you found these highs taken, then you know that you're in an uptrend once you've swept those highs, and then you continue moving upwards. So once you identify the trend as a bullish trend, the first step before you enter a trade, or before you even start to think about a trade setup, is you need to have a low swept. As we're moving up, you can see there were no lows being taken. All lows were being respected. And the first low that was taken was here. Right? So almost 30 minutes after the news event, well into the trend, was the first time we saw a low not respected by price action. And that low created this low, which was also was also not respected and taken. But it doesn't matter. All we need is one. Once we get the first low taken, it doesn't matter if there's 2, 3, or 4 following it. It's all the same. But once we get a low taken, the next step, before we actually put our Fibonacci down and before we put a limit order, is we need a new high to be made. So we had this low swept down, and then we had a movement back up. So essentially we had a false move, a retracement, a false move downwards, which would potentially trigger in some short sellers who then lost their trade once price went above these highs, which is likely where their stop loss would have been. Once we had a new high made, then what we wanted to do is we want to identify our manipulation, which is the low that was made. So from the high to the low is the manipulation. We want to place a Fibonacci on that entire range from wick to wick. And then we wait for a retracement back down to 30%. And on this particular entry, we never got an entry back down to 30%. So we continue. Price is still making new highs. And so again, we look for a low to be taken. Give me a moment. Let me clean up the charts a bit. Okay. So we had a low taken here, swing low. taken by this candle. And then our next step is look for a new high to be made. So this high, we're looking for it to be swept. It was. Price continued moving higher. We wait for a retracement to 30%, and we never had it. We never got it, so there was no trade. Carrying on. Okay, prices continue to make highs. We look for a low to be taken. There was a swing low here, which was swept. Then we need a new high to be made. We got that just by one tick right here. And so then, once again, we do a Fibonacci from the entire manipulation range here. And we wait for a retracement to 30%, which we, on this particular case, we did get. Price bought up, but then it retraced down and we got an entry. Oh, I take that back. Once we got the wick above, making a new high, price immediately retraced down to 30%. So the entry of the trade would have been here. There was a little drawdown, a little heat here, maybe 2 points. And then price bought out of it and through the profit zone. As price continued to make new highs, we follow the same steps. We had a low swept. Then we look for a new high. Get a new high made here. This candle here made a new high. We drew a Fibonacci from this low to this high as being our manipulation zone. And then you wait for price to retrace into 30%, which it did. Unfortunately for this one, it was 930. So this would have been a bad trade to take just because of the time and the volatility that we would expect. And it just went through the zone, ending the trade as a loss. Prices continue to buy up. Okay. Had a low swept there. And a new high put in. This would be a manipulation zone. And once again, this would be your trade setup. So I wasn't watching at the time, so I'm not sure if this would have delivered a win where it would have dipped down, tacked you into the trade, and then came back out prior to ultimately finishing at a lower value. So I'm not 100% sure how that trade worked out. But essentially that's the way it would have worked. So for now, we're just going to watch price for a bit and see what the next or the last 15 minutes before 10 o'clock, see what it brings us. Looks like we may have a deeper retracement coming. We just had this low taken, but it's still too early to say. So we don't want to jump in a trade right now. We just want to continue to monitor price action and just get ready for when we see a setup that we're positive about. So with that, I'm going to take a break from speaking and let's just watch price action for a moment. Here you can see I'm just painting what it was looking like on its way down just a few minutes ago. When we had this low broken, we then had a high swept from here. And then we had a new low made in this candle, pierced down, and immediately following the next candle up to 30% and down the profit. So until further notice, we're looking for highs to be swept and new lows to be made. Now we can see in the bottom left at the 5-minute chart, or on the 5-minute chart, we can see that we're pulling into some bullish fair value gaps. Looks like a retracement of the 830 plus 930 volatility upwards. So we could actually see a reversal soon back to bullish sentiment. But as of right now, we see that price action is delivering lower prices. Okay, we had a lower high made, so we're going to shift this down. Okay, we have a sweep of a high. Now, the third step is to create a new low. So that's our next step. That's what we're waiting for. If it does not create a new low and we start to see higher prices, we are not bullish until surpassing this level. Okay, it's now 10 o'clock. Um, we've given the opening bell 30 minutes for price to sort of settle down and give us an indication of what the end of the morning is going to look like. Still looks like we're in a retracement from a bullish period and we may see higher prices, but that's not confirmed yet. So we're going to continue to wait until price breaks out of the small consolidation that it's in and either gives us a new low where we start looking for a short, or if it builds out of this and builds back up to continue the momentum from 8 and 9:30. close below. As you can see, the range is getting smaller. We're getting lower highs, we're getting higher lows. And so eventually this candle or the next is going to have to break out. Maybe now I'm going to go and grab liquidity from these 4 points. For anyone who's going long, their stop losses are hanging below all of these swing lows. And as it climbs up this trend line, it's just creating liquidity in all these various areas depending on the trader's risk tolerance. They put their stop loss at different levels. And so my guess is that price is going to build up, either pierce through this and then shoot down, or it's going to continue consolidating the zone and then sweep all of these prior to moving up. Clean up our charts. Okay, so we had a, not really. Okay, we had a sweep of a low by one tick. We also had a sweep of a low here by one tick as well. We had this low swept. Therefore, if price continues upwards and takes out this purple line at the top at 15,960, we'll begin looking for longs. Okay, we had our first close on the other side of this trend line, which may signal that its slow upwards build is over. Yeah, I think it closed above again, and it did. Okay, so we're still in this trending zone. It came and it swept these lows, swept this low, and then carried on in the trending direction. Okay, we haven't switched back to bullish yet, but we continue to make new highs. We swept a low, so let's just see how this trade would unfold if we were able to, if we took it. Okay, so we've had a return to our high, to our intermediate term high, which then will flip us back over to being bullish. I mean, let's keep our eyes open for a fake out, but it does appear that we're moving bullish now. Let's get rid of this line. We don't need it. Okay, we don't need this anymore either. So our next step is to look for a low to be swept, which we have a low here that could be. Okay. Okay, now we have a low swept. And our last step in the process is to look for a high to be swept. I'm sorry, not a high to be swept, but a new high to be created. While we wait on the new high, I'm going to go and refill my coffee, take a little break. I'll be back in 2 minutes. Right, I'm back. Okay. So not a lot has happened. We set the limit order and then we wait. We get a new high here. I'll cancel the limit order and we'll reevaluate based on the next few candles. Okay. And a low swept. Okay, I'm gonna cancel this limit order. Just watch price print for a few minutes and see what our next move is going to be. We make a new high, and we'll look for this to be our next setup or move upwards. Okay, we did get that new high. Let's now mark up our range. Okay, you'll see I moved my stop loss at the very tail end. Um, we're only looking for 5 points or 20 ticks. And once I saw price go 18 ticks or so and didn't close out my trade, I was unwilling to take a losing trade at that point. So what I did is I moved my stop loss to break even. Therefore, if price came all the way back, um, then it would close me out without a loss. I just don't want to get 90% to target and then end up with a losing trade. So if I get that far along, I will move my stop to break even. As you can see, we had a winning trade. So now we go back to the sidelines and we wait for the next setup. I'll throw the execution up for anyone who joins later so they can see that we are actually trading. Anyone new to the channel or just joined, if you could hit the like button, that would help out quite a bit with YouTube pushing out the video to other live trade seekers. Hopefully we can get more people in the chat, and so we can build a community of traders and learn from one another. And I'm assuming most traders who join the channel or who are learning to trade would love to do trading full time. So let's build a community of traders who want to trade full time. And we can only do that by getting more people to see the channel. And the way to see the channel is through YouTube suggesting it to them. So if you could hit the like button, that would be much appreciated. But let me go ahead and walk you through the trade that we just took and was a winner. So as I mentioned, we are scalping on the 32nd. And the first step in scalping is to first determine your direction, determine the bias and trend. So we are bullish. We have been bullish for quite some time, since around 10 o'clock. So after this high, and we made a new high here, we were then looking for new longs. But before we could take a long, we need a low to be swept. So we need price to take some liquidity out of the market. That occurred here. When price swept that low, we're still bullish. So we are expecting price to make a new high following sweeping liquidity. So the high at that point was here. And so we waited. Once price swept that high by one tick or two ticks right here. Once that occurred, let me make it larger so it's easier to see. Once we saw this high being taken, then we set up our Fibonacci tool and we look for 30% retracement. And the Fibonacci tool is set up based on the manipulation of the last leg. So if we're bullish, any move downwards, we would consider manipulation and consider just liquidity for the market. So the manipulation leg is we set up the Fibonacci from this low to this high, wick to wick, and we wait for price to retrace 30%, which after it took this high, the next candle immediately retraced into the zone. Let me reset this up on top of the price range here. So you can see price dipped in 3 consecutive candles and then delivered the profit here. I take that back. It was 2 ticks away. It waited for the next candle and then it bought up, delivered, and then sold off. And anyone who tried to get in a second time lost their trade. Okay, the last 6 or 7 candles look to be a short-term consolidation. So this is a good time for us to sit back and just watch price, but not actively engage in the market. Let me move this out of the way. I normally would clear out these purple lines and just give us a clean chart to look at. But since price wants to just sit inside the middle of the two, I want to leave it up just so I can see when it breaks out. Okay, well, there it is. That didn't take long. All right. Unless we get a new high, there's not a lot to do right now. But one thing we do have, and we can see, is that we had a swing low here taken on its way down. So now that we have a high, we actually have the same setup we had before, this low to this high. Okay, I'm going to scrap this limit order since we just made a new high. Yep, V Logic. I do mostly trade at the Nasdaq, but I do trade the S&P sometimes. But I only trade indices. So I haven't traded any forex in quite some time. I also haven't traded crypto in several years. So it's only been indices, whether it's the Dow, Nasdaq, or S&P. But a lot of that comes from the last 2 years. I've been following the mentorship of ICT. So if I don't know if you've seen any of his teachings, but if you follow his teachings, he mostly shows you what's happening in indices. He does show some forex, but for the most part, he does all his teachings with the Nasdaq and S&P. Now, it's not surprising that we're having some resistance here and some stall price action. You'll take a look in the bottom left corner in the 5 minute. You can see this big fair value gap, a bearish fair value gap that price is sitting in right now. It's moved as far as the midpoint and rejected, and now you can see it seeking lower prices. It doesn't mean that we're not going to go through it. It just means that it's going to take some time, and we need to be patient and also agile, just in case we need to look for a short setup instead of longs. Moving in on 10:45, so about 15 minutes before the hour is over. Okay, following our previous long setups, let me just remove this. Right, we had a new high place put in here. We then swept a low. And now if we get a new high, then it's business as usual. Same as we've been doing for the last hour and a half, looking for longs. We'll set up our Fibonacci tool on the manipulation leg and we'll look for a 30% retracement. I would, however, like to see if a new high is placed. I would like to see it actually really create a new high as opposed to when this one broke, it broke by maybe 2 or 3 ticks. I'd like to see it actually get through and maybe put a body, close a body above. Oh, V-Logic. No, I'm actually looking for setups. I don't know when you join, but we did have a trade that we took or that I took just recently. Oh, settings. There we go. So just right here, we took a 5 contract scalp. I'll just walk you through that trade setup on what we were looking for. Okay, so we were trending upwards from 10 o'clock. We put in a high here. Then we were looking for a low to be swept. We found that here with this candle. It broke down, cleared out that low. From there, we look for a new high to be made, which we can see was made on this candle. Let me just make it larger so it's easier to see. This candle right here made a new high. So from there, we set up this Fibonacci from this low to this high. And we waited for price to retrace 30%, which is right there. And then we had a 5-point take profit. So you can see it bought out. And let me just use a trade tool to make it easier to see. Yep. So this was our trade earlier. You can see it never came out and stopped us out. But on this candle, they bought out, securing our trade of a profit of 5 handles per contract. We had 5 contracts. So that was a $500 trade. And then immediately following after we exited our trade, then it tore down, and anyone who decided to take it a second time, or who weren't originally in, they got stopped out. But we are looking for setups, but we're not going to force anything either. We want to make sure, because I'm in the middle of a challenge for Top Step, trying to get my funding, and so I don't want to blow my account. I want to be conservative, but also I want to be able to pass the challenge, which is a $150,000 challenge. So I need $9,000 profit, and I don't want to take too long doing it. So I can't continue taking $100 trades to try to get 9,000. I need to take larger trades, but I don't want to blow my account. So I do want to be conservative in that regard. Yep. So so this on this channel, what I do is I'm scalping the Nasdaq. So we're just looking for 1-to-1 trades, 5-point stop loss, 5-point take profit. So V-Logic, if you want to follow along and catch the live streams every morning, I also do the PM session in the afternoon. Please subscribe to the channel, and you'll get alerts for whenever my live streams when they start. If you weren't aware of them, or if you're just browsing YouTube, they'll put alert on your home screen so you can see when it's coming. Okay, let's clean our screen. Just to remind you, we're still bullish. We've already swept a low. And so now we're just waiting for a new high to be made. So our level that we're waiting for is 16,007 and a half. Okay, if you're European time zone, you can catch me in the afternoon. I do the New York PM session starting at 1 p.m. New York time, which should get you at around, at the earliest, around 6 p.m., but maybe it's going to be 7 or 8, depending on if you're in Central Europe or Eastern Europe or Middle East. But but I try to be flexible with my time, so you should be able to catch me in the afternoon. But thanks for joining. And make sure you like the video. If you like the video, YouTube will push it out to other aspiring traders. Yeah, I'm going to remove this purple line, the lower one. I'm going to keep the upper one so we know when our highs have been swept. But I want to also mark off the lower one so we can get an idea of when we may want to switch our bias. Okay, while we're sitting in the middle of the range, let me take a quick break. I'll be back in 2 minutes. Alrighty. Based on this lower extremity being taken, I'm going to start looking towards having a bearish bias. You just go back through price action a little bit and see if there have been some short setups that have worked out. And if so, then I'll move over to having a bearish bias and start looking for setups that way. Okay. So if you look at this as the low being made, and then we need a high to be taken, we had a high taken there. Now we need a new low to be made. We had a new low made over here. Now let's see if price delivers. Let's grab our short tool. Okay, so there we have it. We had a low made on this candle. The very next candle traded back, traded up, tapped into the 30% zone. And then a candle immediately following delivered the 5-point take profit. There was a retracement back into the zone, tagged in 30%. Also, anyone who's a bit more conservative and wanted to enter at 50% was able to enter on this candle. And then it quickly delivered during the same candle. So that was a very short trade, anyone who was looking for that. So with that being said, we're gonna start looking for shorts. Go ahead and clean up our screen. Okay, we have a high swept now. Let's see if we can get a new low. Oh, good morning, Chris. Welcome back. Chris, we took one trade over here. I think you probably missed that one. Over here, we took a long. So it's about 30 minutes ago. We're now looking for shorts. Or at least we were looking for shorts. And price may actually flip on us again and make us start looking for longs. But we'll see. We'll see if we can get above this area. If we get above this purple line, we'll flip back and start looking for longs. Otherwise, if we seek lows and take out this double bottom, then we'll continue our short search. Okay, we're back in the middle of the zone again. This price is starting to show slower movement. Let's just be aware that so far today, from the London session until now, price has been bullish for about 200 points, from about 15,800 to 16,000. So let's just keep that in mind as we see price stall and consolidate. That it's been very active this morning, and it will need to consolidate at some point, either consolidate or retrace. We got a slight retracement at 9:30, but so far, price still has moved 200 points from where it started and where we are currently. Yeah, Chris, so far just one trade today. Well, there's been two, sorry. I took one prior to the session at about 9 o'clock ish. I took a trade, and then the one I just showed you that we took around 10:30. Okay. Hopefully around 11:10, once this macro finishes, Price will break out of this range and we'll see what it wants to do next. Okay, all right. So we made a big move to the upside now. Okay. Lift this up to our next low that we'd like to see swept. Okay. Even though we've had several lows swept, we're still bullish. We're still looking for longs, waiting for 16,011 to be taken. Let me remove these lines now so we can take a step back and reevaluate. We've now had our lows that made us bullish taken, so we potentially could be looking for shorts again. But you can see how price has been behaving since around 10:30. And it's back to where I mentioned, if you look back from London, let me just move up to a higher time frame. It's maybe 15 minutes. Right, we basically had no movement until about 4 o'clock, and since 4 o'clock, it's just been to the moon. So with this big price upswing, price is going to want to reset and retrace a bit. We look at the entire move from wick to wick from 4 o'clock. Actually, so earlier we had a retracement to 50%, and then the trend continued. Now let's see how far we retrace back. And if we just want to take the last leg, 50% is at about 15,950. It's also right at the top of this order block. So that's actually a good place to look for price to settle. So I think what we'll do is we'll look for shorts until we get to 15,950 and reevaluate. Okay, we're about 10 handles away from the 15,950. Doesn't look like price wants to give us an entry to take a short here, but that's okay. That's fine. 15,950 may not be the resting place. It's just a place for me to reevaluate where we are and take a deeper look at price action. Okay. Yep, we swept a low here. Fair value gap, fair value gap, fair value gap, fair value gap, all the way down. Okay, so I'm going to continue looking for shorts um, until I get an indication that I shouldn't look for shorts. So what I was looking for now is I'm looking for a high to be broken. I think this one is pretty far away. It's about 30 points away, so I'm not sure if price wants to buy up to here only to continue selling. It'll probably make a new one here somewhere. But let's move down to the 15-second and see if we've gotten any highs taken. Negative. No, we haven't. Back to the 30. Okay, we've made a swing high here. Okay, we have a swing high broken now. Now we'll look for a continuation to the downside, taking out these lows. We wait on price. I'm going to take a quick break. I'll be right back. Alrighty. Okay, I see price is broken out of the breaker now. Let's see. Okay, if we cross this purple line, we're returning bullish, and we're going to look for lows to be swept. So let's keep our eye on lows that are swept prior to crossing this line, because that could represent, like a high, low swept, new high, retracement to profit. So you just want to keep an eye on that. We're only about 5 points away. Okay, we've now crossed the threshold. Let's take a peek at the 15-second just to make sure we're not missing anything as far as liquidity sweeps. Okay, we had one swept way down here, but that's a bit far away for me to consider. Okay, we continue to wait. We're looking for a low to be swept. Hopefully we get a return to the breaker, which is this gray line. And in doing so, the low gets swept somewhere in this area. Okay, so we had about a 60% retracement so far. From the low put in between 9 and 10 o'clock. Okay, we're back in the consolidation zone. That has been our high of the day. So let's just keep that in mind. The last time it was up in this area, it struggled to make new highs, and then it sold off for a retracement of 60%. Now that it's completed that retracement, it could sell off again and go down to the 70 or 80% retracement, or do a full retracement, or it could buy out. So, I mean, either of those are available. And so we just want to be aware of it and just make sure that we're nimble and ready for whenever price gives us an indication that we're looking for, so we can take a trade. But for now, I'm not looking for longs or shorts. I want to see what price does now that it's in this zone. Will it reject or will it break through? Okay, we have a breakthrough potential high of the day. We still have not had a low taken throughout this entire move up. So it's traveled almost 80 points without taking a low. Okay, mark up the new low. This green area, for anyone who's been on the live stream the last couple of days, there's been a yellow area every day that we've been referring to as the new day opening gap, which is the gap between the close at 1700 and the opening price 1 hour later at 1800. Whatever that gap is, every day is going to be marked on the chart as a sort of a yellow bar. So this green bar is very similar, but it's the new week opening gap. So this is from 1700 on Friday until the opening at 1800 on Sunday. That gap is denoted by this green bar, which will remain the same for the week, and the new one will open up next week. But just like the new day opening gap, you see it return to that same area several times in the day. The new week opening gap will do the same. You'll see it return to this area multiple times within the week. Okay, will this be the first low taken? Okay, I was waiting for a low to be taken. Looks like maybe we did get it here. Oh, we did. And can't believe I didn't see that, but okay, we have a low taken now. So now all we wait for is for a new high to be formed, which will be back into the new week opening gap. So if you're looking on the weekly chart, since we're at the new week opening gap, basically the candle doesn't have a body right now. It just has the wick from the move down and any other wick from a movement earlier in the week above this area. But right now, there's no body on the candle. Okay, if we get a new high, then we have a long setup. Go over to 15 second. Okay, so we actually had a low taken down here. It was on the 32. I missed it. It's here. Our stop loss down. This trade I'm not believing in right now. As price is not making any higher highs. Every candle is struggling to eclipse the previous high. Cancel that trade. And all of these wicks down here is a good sign. This be the candle that ends the trade. The high of this candle says 22.5. TP was at 23, so it's 2 ticks away from ending. And then reverse and now hovering around equilibrium. I'll tell you why I jumped out of that trade once this is over. All right, it delivered. Delivered without me. All right, so the reason why I jumped out, I'm human. I have emotions like everyone else. I have certain beliefs in what the market will and won't do. But for me, as I mentioned, these first like 5 candles or so, it was making lower highs, continuing to make lower highs, and sitting right around the equilibrium mark. But as I said, making lower highs, lower highs, lower highs. I think I jumped out right at the start of this candle. So this kind of spring action here was when I jumped out of the trade. The one thing that was good was that you had a lot of down wicks, meaning price was going lower and rejecting, going lower and rejecting. But until we got into these several candles, it wasn't really penetrating into the zone the way I would have liked it to. Also, we're at the very top, the highest values of the day. So we're at the highs. So it could reverse and start going down, or it could, stall out. So that was another reason why I wasn't as confident as I wanted to be. And the last reason is we're at the new week opening gap, which is a very key level for the week, and a level that it could have rejected out of. And just as you can see, to end our trade would have needed to get back in there at least a point and a half. Now it did it, so no harm, no foul. But those were the reasons why I wasn't as confident, even though I had entered the trade, and why I jumped out when it was right around break even. Okay, we're just a couple minutes before the hour. So we have the lunchtime macro starting soon. Lunchtime macro typically runs for liquidity that hasn't been taken from the morning session. And as I look at price action or look at the charts, we've moved up, as I mentioned, about 200 points since the London session. So price is likely going to seek out some lows from the last price leg from 11 o'clock. So we could potentially see as shallow as just here, or it can continue and sweep more lows. Remember I mentioned as it was going up, I said, wow, it's gone up 80 points. It hasn't swept a single low. Well, all of these lows are in play for the lunch hour. Starting at 16,005, down to 15,995, 15,963. Okay, so we've had a sweep of a low, essentially here. We've had a new high made. Okay, that trade ended in a loss. Okay. I'll hold off on trades for now, even though it is making higher highs. It's not really trending, and it's trading back into the zone with a large retracement. Oh, that makes sense. What if we have taken the 30 to 50%? Okay, so the 50% would still be in a trade, although uh, right around equilibrium right now. Okay, that would have lost as well. So the same issues I had by exiting the previous trade, same happened here. I'm human and I have the same emotions like everyone else. I get scared out of trades. I get FOMO and jump into a trade just like everyone else. I just been doing this for a little bit now, so I have it under control, but it still gets me sometimes. So we'll wait for price to move out of this range. And as I mentioned, I'm actually expecting this hour to deliver lower prices. And let's see if we got a sweep of this high and then lower prices. Okay, we can actually drop this down to here. Now we have a high that was eclipsed. Let's see if we get lower prices. All right. Due to the time and the way price is moving now, where it's not really making a decision, I'm going to cut the feed. Normally, I would have ended the feed about 10 minutes ago. I'll be back in 50 minutes at 1 o'clock for the afternoon session. So thanks for joining. I look forward to seeing you and talking to you this afternoon.